Welcome to the next episode of My Book Story. Today I am with an exciting guest. I'm so excited about this show. Again, we are on Global Conference TV. If you haven't subscribed on our channel, make sure that you subscribe on us. And I promise you this, we're only giving the best and we're only calling the best. Today I am with Mr. Nyiko Baloyi. This dude, man, when it's come to branding, I wish you are here with me, but I'm happy that you are watching this episode. Mr. Nyiko, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much, sir. Man, thank you for having me.
And I'm so excited about this episode because I know there's so much that we're going to get. Because
definitely
we are in a space in South Africa where many people want to start their business, and many they're missing the main ingredient of how to build a successful business. And I was reading your book and I was like, it speaks about how the big brand did it in how did they become big, like the power of brand positioning.
Yes.
So welcome to the show and be free, man. Share this information because I know it's expensive to have one-on-one with you, but this kind of podcast, it helps our viewers to learn from you. But before we go any further, please introduce yourself and tell the viewers, what are you doing?
Well, my name is Nyiko Baloyi, and I'm a brand and marketing strategist. Right. I work with different companies as mostly a freelance marketing director. Right. It's a new term. So being a freelance marketing director means that I play the role of a marketing director in different companies across various industries. You know, I've worked with companies in iron ore mining, rail engineering, cosmetics, luxury furniture, luxury restaurants, so basically across all industries, that's what I do. And the book that I've written, it's actually my first book, right? It's long overdue. It's called How the Big Brands Did It, the power of outstanding brand positioning. Not just brand positioning, but outstanding brand positioning, you know. And it basically just takes you into the psychology of these big brands, how they became the big brands that they are today, how they became to be perceived the way that they are, and how they have managed to occupy the space in the minds of the consumers. Because you must remember, marketing is a game of perception versus reality. The big brands control how they are perceived. And ultimately, once they occupy that space in the minds of the consumer, then the consumers start to then promote that statement between each other, amongst themselves. You've seen it most recently with brands like Woolworths, and I make reference to Woolworths as well in my book. I make reference to many other brands, your Apple, ShopRite, So I think where I need to start is, what is brand positioning? Because a lot of people, believe it or not, we have a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of qualified marketers who still do not understand just what brand positioning is. Yes.
Like you have given us so much, but before we can go there, take us in the beginning, before you become the man you are today.
Yes.
Where did it all begin?
It started when I worked for I was an intern at one of the biggest banks in South Africa, and I was actually supposed to be there as a graphic designer, right, with this internship. Sure. But then they took me to, the first department they took me to was customer strategy. And this was so that I could understand the psychology behind the briefs that they sent down to the graphic designers. How the psychology of the brand, and get to understand how the brand operates, that bank in particular. And when I got there, I wasn't too happy about it, because I was like, I just want to design. I just want to get creative, and And so what happened is I had a mentor whom I have to thank, to this day. She had been there She had been with the bank for 25 years, you know, so she would take me to meetings, you know, strategic meetings, customer strategy and brand strategy meetings, you know. And I would sit there and I was amazed at the psychology at how psychological brands are.
Okay.
You know, many people think brands are visual. But even in them being visual, there's a psychology behind it. And many people focus on the visual. But if you get to the visual before you understand the psychology, and before you have a strategy around the psychology of your brand, then your visuals will not do anything for you. You could have the most beautiful looking logo, the most beautiful website, everything about your brand could look pretty. But if psychologically it does not achieve what is going to really do well for your bottom line, you will have a failing brand.
Yeah.
And this is why these big brands that I listed there do not necessarily have the best products.
And you stated that on your book, and you
Yes.
make a reference to the two cell phone companies, and
Yes,
the other one
yes.
is Perceive. Because even if I have that cell phone, I feel better.
You do.
Yeah, like,
it's a psychology behind it, you know. So then, as I was there and I was going through to all these meetings, and I got so fascinated by it, you know, and I knew. When I got out of the first meeting that I was taken to, I knew that this is what I'm going to do with my life. Graphics, I was still going to do it, but I knew that my passion was brand strategy and customer strategy, you know. And I was in that department for 6 months, and then afterwards they took me to the studio now, you know. And you know, at first, before I went to that department, so in the morning. My first day in that bank, they took me to the studio and said, this is where you're going to be after 6 months.
Okay.
And when I looked at that studio, I got so excited because they had all these big machines and it just looked cool to me, you know. But then after that 6 months in the customer strategy department, when they took me back, that excitement was not there anymore because I wanted to stay there, you know. So I continued learning about it a lot, you know, following people like your Tom Peters, following people who have really created big brands as well, you know, your Steve Jobs, you know, you name them, you know what I mean? I started following how really the psychology behind them creating such brands, you know, because it's not by chance. It's not a coincidence that the brands have stuck on for so long, you know. I look at Coca-Cola. I mean, there's a statement that was once said by the CEO of Coca-Cola, and he said that now this is evidence to the power of psychology in brands. He said that if there was to be a sudden natural disaster, and all the warehouses of Coca-Cola and all the manufacturing plants and all their existing products, if they were all to be wiped out completely, then Coke would still live on as a brand. But if there was to be a sudden lapse in memory and everyone was to forget that Coke exists, with all their billions worth of manufacturing plants and products, Coke would be nothing. So what this tells you is that Coke is in the minds of people, not in the bottle. I mean, if the CEO of Coke tells you that our product is not in this bottle, our product is in the minds of people. In fact, in the book, in the second chapter, I mentioned Harley Davidson.
Yeah.
Yes, you know, Tom Peters says no one who works for Harley Davidson is stupid enough to think that Harley Davidson makes motorcycles. In fact, to this day, Harley Davidson is listed as a lifestyle brand, not as a machine manufacturer, not as a motorcycle company. They are listed as a lifestyle brand.
And sorry to...
Yes.
And I even there's something that you said on the book where when they changed the perception about their brand, they made about 15 billion.
Yes, their stock went up. Once people started perceiving it as a lifestyle brand and they had convinced Wall Street to list them as a lifestyle brand, their stocks went up by like 15 billion US dollars.
Yeah.
That is evidence of the power of psychology when it comes to marketing, the way that brands are perceived. So when a person buys a Harley Davidson, they're not buying the actual machine. Yes, they look at the specs, fine. But what they are buying is the lifestyle behind it, you know, the experience that they get from it. Yeah. You look at Nike. Nike will never say to you in their adverts, Nike will never say to you that our shoe is made from this quality of sole. In fact, they make very little reference to their actual products. You know, that is something you are told about when you get to the store. But psychologically, in their marketing, what they're selling to you is great athletes, people who don't conform to society, people who stand for what they believe in. This is why they endorse people like your Caster Semenya now. And there's this football player, I keep forgetting his name, the one who was defiant during the national anthem, the American national anthem, and he took a knee, which he was doing in defiance of what was happening, standing up for a certain cause. And they decided to endorse him when all the other brands pulled out. So Nike is saying psychologically that this is how we want to be perceived by you, that we stand up for those who stand up for what they believe in.
Just to add on that, even on Nike, I like what they did with Tiger Woods. When everyone was running away from him, they stepped in.
Exactly.
And when he came back, they reap the benefits because they understand the power of a brand.
Definitely. Yeah. And now, did I even finish the story about where it started? Let me just carry on and then we can. So what happened is I started learning a lot about it, you know, and the other company I worked for when I got out of Standard Bank, I was employed still as a graphic designer. Okay. But what I would do is I worked very closely with the marketing manager, and I would end up suggesting a lot of strategies because I was so passionate about it. And I remember during a meeting, a meeting with all the employees there, I suggested this thing that had nothing to do with my graphic design work. It had more to do with sales and marketing. And I remember the CEO saying, you know what, I think, he said to the marketing manager, I think this guy is trying to steal your job. Needless to say, a couple of months later, the same marketing manager fired me. Wow. Because apparently I wasn't doing what I was hired to do. I was doing what was outside of my scope, you know. Fast forward, 4 years later, I went back to that company as a marketing consultant. Wow. You know, and that's what I've been doing ever since, you know. Wow. So coming back to the book, how the big brands did it and the power of outstanding brand positioning. The biggest mistake that many entrepreneurs make is wanting to occupy a space in the mind of the consumer that other brands have occupied already, right? And they want to compete on products. Great products will not guarantee your success.
So in essence, business is a game of perception.
It's a game of perception.
So if we are perceived as better than so and so, and then people will buy. And there's something that you said when we were having a discussion, that many businesses, they're trying to find their spot in the market and they miss the spot in the mind of a consumer.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you give us like a reference where like a startup, like a guy who's starting from scratch, and then how can he build that? How can he build his brand from scratch?
Yes.
If possible, you can even make an example of authors, because this show is focusing on authors. How can they build that kind of? How can they stand out?
Yes.
Because most of the time people don't buy their books because like they're like so and so, and yeah. But since we have you, can you help them? Okay,
no, definitely. You know what? In fact, I have a step-by-step guide. The final chapter in the book is a step-by-step guide to creating your own outstanding brand positioning. You know, and I'm glad you mentioned authors because I make a lot of reference to brands that sell products. But then this book is not only meant for companies, it's meant for individuals as well, you know, because I also do personal brand identity, right? So here's the thing, first and foremost, you need to do an internal marketing exercise. right? Many people rush to do external marketing. Now, there's a difference between external marketing and internal marketing. External marketing is you telling the world about who you are and you trying to get people to buy your product. Internal marketing is you defining what type of perception you want to create in the mind of the consumer, not in the market, in the mind of the consumer, because the market is made up of consumers. So if you don't find a space in the mind of a consumer, you will never find a space in the market. Yeah. And ultimately, once you find a space, a favorable space in the mind of a consumer, which is not occupied by any other author, what happens is then you are guaranteed market share. But if you find a space in the market, if you see a gap in the market and you go for it, but you don't have a space in the mind of the people who make up that market, there's absolutely no way that you're going to succeed, no matter how big your budget is. So for me, the first place to start is that internal marketing exercise. How do you do it? Who are you writing for?
Sure.
You obviously know your topics already. You know, when you ask people about themselves and about their companies, and I see this all the time, especially when you speak to entrepreneurs, you know, the biggest mistake, if you don't have a lot of time, never ask an entrepreneur about their company because they can talk for hours and hours on end. But if you want to have a very short discussion, and this is a sad thing, if you want to have a very short discussion with them, ask them about their consumer. They know very little about their consumers. That's because many brands speak. Entrepreneurs like to speak and sell, but they don't listen. So what happens is you'll find a company where there are customers who have come back like 5 times. And you ask the owner of the company, or even the sales team, and you ask them, why do these people keep coming back to buy from you? And they have no clue. Then you find one who's come once and they never come back again. Do you know why they never came back? Not at all. So what happens is you can't capitalize on the thing that is most attractive about your business because you don't know what it is that keeps coming, that keeps bringing them back, right? And you cannot fix the thing that turns people away. So you keep making the same mistakes, and when you think the solution is just a big budget, a big marketing budget, let's do a big Facebook campaign, let's do billboards, let's do all these things. But the thing is, you are not dealing with the internal marketing issues in your company, right? So first of all, understand who you are, understand your audience, because you are not writing for yourself. So you knowing about yourself and what you write about is irrelevant. It is important as far as you putting it down on paper. But as far as the sales and marketing process of your book, that does not help you at all. What helps you is you understanding who you are writing for. Who are they? Turn them into a human being. Give them a name if you have to. Give them an age. Give them a mind space. Where are they at this point in their life? Exactly, you know. So just create them into, are they married? Are they single? Is it both? What are their challenges? What are their problems? You know, how do you solve them? Right? And once you understand why people should buy your book, then you need to look at who else is playing in that space.
Okay.
Right? So who are your competitors? So who would be the alternative? If they're not buying your book now, if you know that the market exists, they are buying a book, then they're just not buying yours. Whose book are they buying? And once you find out whose books they are buying, do not, and I repeat, do not try and be like that person. Because that's the biggest mistake you can ever make. And this is why in the book I make reference to Nando's. There's a chapter, being first versus being better. And the argument I make is that it's always better to be first in the mind of the consumer than to be better. Because it's very difficult to change the mind of a consumer once it's made up. So don't go in there trying to say, okay, what I'm trying to do here is to get them to stop buying from this author and let me occupy that space. Now you're going to have big challenges there. What you need to do is look at what space these authors are not occupying in the mind of the consumer, not in the market, in the mind of the consumer. And once you identify that space, then you start to create a brand positioning statement, right? Now, this is different from a slogan or a tagline. This is internal, right? This is a slogan, it's a statement that defines, because now you've identified who you are, you've identified your customers, you've identified your competition, and you've identified the space that you are going to occupy, which is not occupied by anyone else. Then you come up with that statement, right, which should be the driving force for all your efforts moving forward. So let's say maybe if you are, let's say you are a religious author, right, and then you find that, okay, everyone talks about, let's say, the history of religion as an example, right, but then there's a particular topic that no one really touches up on, and you find that you go very deeply into that topic. What that can form part of your brand positioning statement, right? And then what happens is when it reaches your customers, it should be perceived as being the first of its kind. No, that should be your ultimate goal, not to be perceived as being better than the other one, because that space is already occupied. They're not going to let you in. People don't have the time to, people don't even want to change their minds. You know, people are brand loyal.
That's true.
You know, and so once you find that space, then to them it's like, oh, this is something new. And once they see something, yes. So now they're saying that, okay, I don't have to necessarily stop buying my favorite author on this subject, but this other author speaks about things that this author doesn't. So I can buy this author and buy this one as well.
Yeah. Sure. This is amazing, because like now when you're speaking about first looking within you,
yes.
I'm imagining a company that is decaying within, and then but outside it being perceived as, because like that's a challenge that you are doing. You find that we have our heroes,
yes,
and then we want to become like them, and then because once you become second, you are no longer relevant.
Yeah.
Please define for us brand positioning.
Brand positioning, in simple terms, is the space which a brand or a product occupies in the mind of a consumer, right? And then ultimately in the market, obviously. But it has more to do with the space you occupy in the mind of a consumer. I make examples of, let's say, cars.
Yeah.
In fact, in the book, I make examples of cars. You think Volvo, you think safety. Mercedes-Benz, luxury. BMW, performance. Those are all spaces in the minds of consumers that are occupied, right? And then we come to now this perception, because this space that you're occupying, most of the time, it is not reality. It is perception which wins over reality. So it is about how people perceive your brand, and not what in reality it is. And I make reference of Apple. Now, Apple is a beautiful brand, right? But Apple, the iPhone, in fact, is not the best smartphone in the industry. There are far cheaper smartphones in the industry that are far better than the iPhone, right? But the iPhone is the most expensive. Why? This is because of how Apple is perceived, right? People perceive Apple as something which is worth spending all that money on. And that is the space you want to be as a brand. Yeah. So this proves to you that products, prices, services are nothing in your marketing. The winner there, the biggest component of your marketing is perception. It is how are you perceived. And to see that this is true, I mean, you can find a brand of shoes, right, that is much better quality, much stronger, that will last you longer, that is cheaper than a certain brand, right? Let's say maybe you see Nike here and you see another
Nyiko.
Yes, a no-name brand next to it. It could have far better qualities than the Nike. But chances are, if Nike has occupied that space in your mind, you will not be convinced otherwise.
And people don't even care. Once they've made their mind about a certain brand. They don't care how much it costs.
Exactly.
Actually, they even, like, I remember when I was growing up, there were guys where they are still in school. They will work on Saturday so that they can save up for a certain brand.
Exactly.
So how much it costs was not a problem.
It's not an
what
issue.
they want is to have that brand.
Exactly.
The next question that I have is, when someone is starting a startup, is it important to first build a perception or to start to build a business? Like, let's say I want to build a shoe brand.
Yes.
Should I first build the perception that I want the consumer that I want to create in the mind of my consumer, or should I start by building the shoe that I want to sell to the market, according to you?
Well, according to me, it would be, obviously you need to have a product first.
Yes.
Right. Although part of your product development process could include the perception you want to create.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're trying to create the perception of durability, that okay, this is a strong shoe for construction workers, the materials that you're going to use to create that product will be affected by the perception you're trying to create. You can't use flimsy material to create a shoe that is designed to be durable. You know what I mean? So the two need to work hand in hand.
Okay.
At all times. You need to understand that the product that you are putting out there needs to be in line with the perception that you are trying to create. All right. So really, I feel like it's more a chicken and egg type of setup, where you can't have one without the other. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But which one is more expensive?
The product.
The product.
The product is more expensive. You know what? Creating a perception is actually not as expensive as people would think, In fact, now you have social media. Yeah. It's much easier to reach wider audiences, So it's much cheaper for you to create a perception than most people think. Okay. I think then the most expensive exercise, where people like me would come in, would be the fact that not everyone understands the dynamics. And this is why I wrote this book and why I gave the steps to doing this, because I wanted to share this with everyone who's willing to listen. Because right now, this is information that is shared in boardrooms or when I'm trying to convince clients to give me business, And I felt that it needs to go down. People need to know this, because many people are starting businesses, as you said, but very few of them understand. And this is why I say to you that many startups fail before they are even startups.
Yeah, that's true. And it's one of the challenges that we are facing in the country, because,
yes,
like, for me, like, there's the digital marketing and, yes, the digital world. I feel that we have those space that we can occupy as, yes, as entrepreneurs. Yes. But the challenge is, it's difficult to find like people with your expertise, because for me, social media is not about posting that I've released this book, yes, but there is a psychology behind what you are posting. Definitely. like the posting and everything, because once we miss the psychological part, that's when we're missing everything.
Yeah, true. And with social media, you need to understand, social comes from, it's a society. It's a world, it's a community, yeah, on its own. So the psychology that exists in this reality and the one that exists in the virtual reality are interlinked. And with every day that goes by, they become even more and more interlinked. So the more you start to treat social media as a community and a society, the better for you. So this means that if in our reality the psychology of brands dominates, then it means on social media it's the same thing as well. This is why it's very hard for a brand to do amazingly well in this reality and not do amazingly well on social media.
And it's amazing that even companies, they even invest more on the celebrities because they have a bigger social community.
Yes. Yes.
So like now we are concluding. Can you give us the example or the signs of the outstanding brand and how one can create that brand from scratch?
Okay. The signs are, number one, perception.
Okay.
All right. And this is a perception that works to your advantage. Right. So if your brand is perceived the way which you want it to be perceived, then that is a sign of outstanding brand positioning. Oh. An example would be, I'll go back to Apple. Or in fact, let me just say ShopRite. Yeah. Right? Because ShopRite is actually not the cheapest. It's perceived to be the cheapest, but it's actually not. They market themselves as the cheapest. They position themselves in areas where they assume people are looking for cheaper alternatives, right? But it's actually not the cheapest. In fact, Checkers, which is part of which is the same company as ShopRite, Checkers a study has shown that Checkers is actually cheaper than ShopRite. Sure. But the positioning there, this also proves that prices come second when it comes to brand positioning. It's always perception, brand positioning first. Prices, products come later, right? So that's the first sign. The second one is association. What do they associate your brand with? Sure. Right? So this comes back to what I was talking about with your cars, and you think Mercedes-Benz, you're associated with this, that and the other. So what is your brand associated with? When your brand comes up, what is the first thing that comes to people's minds? Right? And then there's I'm not listing all of them, but all of them are in the book, but then just the most prominent ones. And then there's the generic effect. Right? Now, this is amazing when especially to students of anthropology and psychology, because I actually had one of the people who read my book studied anthropology, and she said to me that she was almost in tears for 2 minutes when she read the book. Wow. Because of the truth that she found in it. Right? Now, there's the generic effect. The generic effect is when people start to refer to competitor products using the name of your brand. Yeah. You find here Rama. Yeah. Every spread or margarine, people will say it's Rama. You know what I mean? Colgate, Coke. Yeah. What else? Jacuzzi. Because Jacuzzi is actually the name of a brand. Many people don't even know this. Jacuzzi is the name of a brand. That thing is actually a hot tub. Right? Wow. But everyone will say, walk into the house, une jacuzzi lago. And it's not a jacuzzi. Wow. It's actually a hot tub, So the generic effect shows the power of brand positioning. Because imagine competing in a space where people refer to your products as using the competitor brand's name. You know what I mean? I mean, it's, yeah. Okay.
It's amazing that even when when people buying Coke and these other brands of soft drink brands, they say these one are fake. Even though they are not fake. So, exactly. So I understand what you're saying.
Coke is the original,
So and this,
exactly. In fact, even this generic effect, I believe is part of the reason why Pepsi did not quite make it in South Africa, because everyone knew it as Coke. Coke. Some people will tell you, I mean, I personally feel like Pepsi brands taste better than Coke brands. You know what I mean? I hope Coke won't see this, because I might want to be to work with them, but that's the reality. But it doesn't matter. I mean, people can come up with a soft drink that tastes 10 times better than Coke, but they will not occupy the space that Coke occupies. In fact, Coke is so, I love Coke the brand. I love the brand of Coke, because Coke can cut across it cuts across everywhere. I mean, you can find a billionaire sipping on Coke the same way you would find someone living in a shack drinking Coke. And this is why and I mean, you look at now what they're doing with the names and actually connecting psychologically with communities and really showing that they are a part of, and they've earned it. For me, they have earned to be called a part of the South African community. You know, and once your brand gets to that, then you know that you are outstanding. And then it brings me to another point, final and very important point for me, is patience. Outstanding brand positioning takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time. It does not happen overnight. So for me, if you're not planning on having a brand that you're going to leave for your kids and for your grandkids, like how the people who own KFC and all of them did it, then don't even bother creating an outstanding brand positioning. Don't even bother building a big brand. You know what I mean? If you're going to try and build a big brand, just understand that you're not building it for now. You must build a brand that's going to last for a very long time.
Oh, man. You have so much in you.
No,
and for sure, I will invite you for part 2. So before we part ways, I just want you to share with my viewers, how can they get hold of you?
Okay. You can find my book on my website. It's nyikobaloyi.co.za. That's NYIKOBALOYI.co.za. You can find the free ebook and free audiobook. It's called How the Big Brands Did It, The Power of Outstanding Brand Positioning. And if you want to stand out from the crowd and you want to build a big brand, then this is the book for you.
Wow.
This is the book for you.
Okay, guys, this was a very informative show, and I hope you have learned a lot, and I promise you that I'm going to bring back Mr. Nyiko to come and share with us. But make sure that you have made notes and subscribe into this channel. And I know now you agree with me, this is the best show in Mzansi, because we're giving you stuff from real people who are experiencing. We are not giving people who are not living what they are talking about. So make sure you subscribe to Global Conference TV. Till we meet again, we are here every Wednesday sharing with you stuff that will change your life. Cheers.